This is the Brewers POSTCAST, your instant game reaction for the Milwaukee Brewers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
About as ugly gets tonight for your Milwaukee Brewers, a 10-0 loss at the hands of these Chicago Cubs. And if you weren't watching the game on TV, you would have thought the Milwaukee Brewers are playing in Wrigley. Too many Cubs fans there at American Family Field as the Brewers fall in ugly fashion to the Chicago Cubs again by a final score of 10-0. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Snyder, your host for the Locked On Brewers POSTCAST show. Again, just the POSTCAST show. Chuck Freeman has your Locked On Brewers daily podcast wherever you get podcasts, covering all of Wisconsin sports over on WTMJ.com, 620 WTMJ on your airwaves. Please feel free to give me a follow on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. And as always, follow the podcast here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks for always making Locked On Brewers your first and now last listen each and every day with the Brewers POSTCAST edition. And another tough one for our Milwaukee Brewers tonight, 10-0 at the hands of the Chicago Cubs. The Brewers now falling to an overall record of 16-17. Just a few days ago, I told you on this very show that things may have been turning around for the Brewers. They beat the Cardinals in that game 3 out of 3 out there in St. Louis. They won their first 2 games against the White Sox in Chicago. Fell in game 3 to the Chicago White Sox and have yet to score a run in the last 2 games. And it includes a pitiful, embarrassing, disgusting, unexplainable loss to the Chicago Cubs at American Family Field on a Friday night in a very, very, very big series. The first one of the year between these two teams. The Cubs now 20-13 on the year. The Brewers, again, as we mentioned, falling to 16-17 on the year. I'm not going to take too much time. Let's just get right into the turning point in this one.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
The turning point for me tonight is the start of the game. That was the difference tonight for the Milwaukee Brewers falling to the Cubs 10-0. I have always been a big fan of Pat Murphy. I thought what he did last year was fantastic. I thought the loyalty he's shown the city of Milwaukee when he could have very well went to Chicago with Craig Counsell and decided to stick it out in Milwaukee and take over the reins of manager and bringing on Ricky Weeks and kind of taking that tough nose, chip on the shoulder type attitude and bringing it into a blue collar city here in Milwaukee. I do not understand rolling out Tyler Alexander to start the game today. I just don't get it. I understand during the television broadcast on Apple TV, he said that he wanted Quinn, to kind of ease into this one a little bit. He hadn't pitched a lot. He hasn't pitched a lot in this environment. I quite frankly, I didn't care. I thought that was a terrible way to begin a series against a team where you need to win. You need to win these games against the Chicago Cubs. Like you're trailing them by multiple games, not only early in May here in the division, but now you're down 1 game in the season series between these two teams. I thought it was a god-awful start to the series by rolling out Tyler Alexander. There are a lot more smarter people than me when it comes to the game of baseball, and I'm not claiming to be the smartest. I don't understand the Tyler Alexander thing. I don't get it. His ERA is now probably near 4.56 ERA. I don't understand what we're doing. A couple weeks ago, he was put into a high leverage situation in the 8th inning out in San Francisco. Today he gets the start. I quite frankly, I don't understand it. That's your turning point. That's your turning point for tonight's game because right off the bat, Murphy goes with Tyler Alexander. Boom. Brewers are down 2-0 in the blink of an eye. Before the Brewers can get 2 outs, they're down multiple runs. And guess what? Guess which team has yet to win a game when they don't score first? You guessed it. The Milwaukee Brewers. 0-11 now as this Milwaukee Brewers team, without scoring a run, first have lost every single game. 0-11. So right off the bat, for me, I'm watching the game. I put it on Twitter. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. I put it on Twitter. So the Brewers are in for a long night. They're in for a long night. It was a pitiful performance against Chicago White Sox, who are, you might as well just, cancel their season, cancel Christmas for them. That's over. their season's over. You roll out the helmets on that getaway game 3 against the Chicago White Sox, which we didn't have a show that day. And I thought, thinking out loud, that was a bad sign. I thought personally, it was a bad sign because that was a game. And I know we're not talking about the game before, but I thought that was a bad sign for what was to come and what we saw tonight. We'll get into a lot more of what we saw tonight. Just no offense against Chicago White Sox in that game 3 where you should have won that game and rolled into Chicago, or in Chicago. It was Milwaukee, but it felt like a Chicago Cubs home game. Shame on you, Brewers fans. And coming into tonight with a 4-game win streak, and instead you lose 8-0 the day before, and today you lose 10-0. I mean, the Brewers run differential. We'll look at it after tonight is got to be among the worst, if not the worst, as they lose 10-0 tonight against the Chicago Cubs. Now 16-17 on the season. Lots of reaction rolling in. We're going to start with the everydayer Nick himself saying that was a disgusting, depressing, all-around team failure, no matter what the pitching does. If no runs get home, you cannot win. Please send help to the crew, please. And thank you. Love the show, Brandon. Nick, love the comments, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we'll talk a little bit about the issues with this team going forward. It's going to be my what you'll be talking about tomorrow segment. 2 runs in the first inning tonight of Tyler Alexander. Quinn Priester comes in later in that first inning. No better. Grand slam. 7 more runs. I mean, before the Brewers had gotten 2 full innings pitched, they were down 9-0. 1 1/3 inning of this game, its score was 9-0. And right there and then, I think if you've been following the Brewers for quite some time, you knew it was over. I knew it was over when it was 2-0 because of what I saw in game 3 against the Chicago White Sox. Now, you did well against the St. Louis Cardinals in that 3rd game. You scored some runs. You did well in games 1 and 2 in Chicago, albeit not pretty baseball, sloppy at times, but you won those games. Game 3 against the White Sox, you looked terrible. You looked awful. Bryce Terrain wasn't feeling well. He left the game early today. Christian Yelich hasn't had a hit in multiple days. Jackson Churrio's plate discipline hasn't gotten any better. You have nothing going offensively whatsoever. And now, I don't want to say this is a pivotal point in the season because I just told you guys 2 days ago, that things could be changing for this Brewers. So I don't want to be like that guy that's going back and forth on how I'm feeling. You get swept against the Cubs here in May, early May. Yeah, you 2 out of 3, you lose maybe. Things just aren't looking good. The wild card, as we talked about, is very, very hard in the National League to gain one of those wild card spots with how the divisions are, especially the NL West, the NL East. It's almost like you got to win the division, to feel better about your playoff positioning and at least your chances going in to playoff baseball. And a bad series against these Cubs, and you got off to a very bad foot tonight with a 10-0 loss, embarrassing loss. Absolutely. And I put that, and I'm using that with capital letter E, embarrassing. Pat Murphy said during the game that it didn't backfire on him, that he started Tyler Alexander instead of Quinn Priester. It absolutely backfired on you, Pat. It absolutely backfired on you. It was bad. It completely set the entire game off. So now Quinn Priester comes in down 2-0. You just said you didn't want him, and he hasn't been in this situation. He hasn't been in this type of environment. Now his back is against the wall. And to make matters worse, Pat, the offense has no life to it in the last 48 hours. So I understand you wanted to maybe get a quick 3 outs, let Quinn kind of ease into that game. It was a bad decision. And if you're going to make that decision, do it. For the love of God, have somebody else besides Tyler Alexander. I don't want to see him anymore. I just don't. He's probably a great guy. He's probably a very good dude. Probably has a future in baseball and has the ability to be a pitcher one day. I'm a fan and somebody that wants to see this team have success in the postseason. Tyler Alexander is not part of that equation. I'm sorry. He's not. Drum over on YouTube. I wish this ownership would spend more money on this team. Yeah. That's a very, very great point, because I think everybody would agree with you there, Drum. Thanks for your comment. DMH over on YouTube as well. Honest question. Are we a bad baseball team? It's funny that you asked that question because I asked myself that question watching this game tonight. And I thought, did we overperform a year ago? Maybe. Right? Willie was good. He got paid. Pitching was just phenomenal last year. The defense was amazing. Gold Glove, platinum winners on this team. Defense was fantastic. Yeah, offense was clutch. And, it wasn't great all year last year, but it had moments. It's very possible. And we'll talk a little bit about that. It's going to be in the next segment when I talk about the things that you'll be talking about tomorrow. Kevin on YouTube as well. Chuck Freeman on his last show stated that the Cubs don't hit very well. I don't know what Chuck said, but the Cubs have the best offense in baseball. They don't have a good bullpen. They have the best offense in baseball, and that was on display before the Milwaukee Brewers got pitched 2 full innings in this game. The game was over. It was 9-0. 1 1/3 inning of this game. The score was 9-0, and it was over. So I don't know what Chuck had mentioned about their bats, but their bats are lethal. That was on display tonight. And the Brewers, unfortunately, get the 10-0 loss at the hands of the Chicago Cubs. Lots more to get into tonight. We got to discuss the player of the game. I don't know if that's going to be a spoiler, but it's not going to be a Milwaukee Brewer. So lots to get into on the program, as well as the things you'll be talking about today. But we are presented tonight by Fire TV. Did you know that Fire TV is also an Xbox? News to me, because I had no idea. Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Those consoles these days are expensive. They're ridiculous. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 2025 to Call of Duty to all kinds of games as easily as you stream your favorite shows. I don't know about you guys, but I have all kinds of streaming services in my house: Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, all that good stuff. Fire TV Stick 4K allows you to do everything in one place. It's much smoother, it's faster, and it's 4K ready with a simple streaming stick. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. Fantastic offer. Again, head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV/Locked On. All right, we did want to talk about the player of the game in the Milwaukee Brewers 10-0 loss against the Chicago Cubs. And newsflash, it's not a Milwaukee Brewer.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Well, I mentioned the turning point in this game was the start of this game, and the player of this game is part of the reason for that is because the Brewers were down early in this one. 6 different Cub players had at least 1 RBI in this one. Bush had that grand slam early in the game. But my player of the game tonight, and you could point to Pete Crow Armstrong, who had 2 home runs himself. The Cubs were just fantastic at the plate tonight. But Ben Brown, the pitcher, the starting pitcher for the Chicago Cubs, is going to get my nod as the player of the game. 6 innings pitched, 4 hits allowed, and no earned runs against this Milwaukee Brewers offense. Nothing really out of Yelich, nothing out of Jackson Chourio. The Brewers with just 5 measly hits all game long. Ben Brown just allowing 4 of those 5, but he was dominant early and often against this Milwaukee Brewers. I did want to take the last few minutes here to discuss 1 or 2 things you may be talking about tomorrow morning when you wake up.
This is what you'll be talking about.
Well, we had comments last week talking about wait till you play the Cubs. The Cubs are going to smoke you. This Brewers team's not built to beat the Cubs. And I kind of pushed a lot of that off. And I said, we'll see. This team just is different, right? As we saw last year, this team they fight through adversity. When their backs are against the wall, they seem to be, that's when they respond the best. This seems to be when they are at their best. Well, and maybe this is a little bit hyperbolic, but after one game, I think we can all agree that these two teams are not on the same planet. I don't think it's close. The Brewers and the Cubs. I don't think it's close. The Cubs beating the Brewers tonight by a final score of 10-0 with the loss. The Brewers now 16-17 on the year. Their second loss in a row after dropping a 8-0 loss the other day against the Chicago White Sox. The two offenses are the glaring thing here for me. And maybe something clicks. Maybe Yelich gets going. Chourio in that middle of the lineup starts peaking at the right time, and the Brewers are able to kind of flex their bats. But I don't know. As it stands right now, these teams look completely different. They look completely different. And I know Justin Steele is done for the year, and the Cubs bullpen isn't great, and their starting pitching can be the conversation. And the conversation in Chicago might be at Kent, how much is it going to cost to keep Kyle Tucker? And I get all of that. Right now, it's not close, guys. It's just not close. It's just not. Unfortunately, it's just not. The pitching for the Brewers, as we had talked about, had been a strength of this team. Last year, we saw it, right? The defense had been a strength. How many games in the last week? I've only been doing the show for about a week now, week and a half. All of last week in San Francisco, their defense looked like they had forgotten how to play, right? And that had been a strength. Now we're getting picked off on the bases. That had been a strength, running the bases, having that threat of putting that pressure on starting pitching, putting that pressure on opposing defenses. Those have been strengths. They're now weaknesses. At least they're not what they were. Cubs fan here, first and second inning was a disaster. Why was your starting pitcher removed after he didn't cover first? Everything was a disaster. And I appreciate you as a Cubs fan coming on to the Locked On Brewers postcast show in a 10-0 loss to your Cubbies as the Brewers fall to 16-17 on the year. There was a change about 3 hours before first pitch. Quinn Priester was the guy that was supposed to get the start. Pat Murphy decided, against Craig Counsell of all people, to roll out a starter to get the first few outs and Tyler Alexander. And again, why that was Tyler Alexander, well, I'm sure we'll hear from Pat Murphy. But it wasn't the right decision, and I think everybody can agree with that now, as he gave up 2 early runs. Quinn Priester goes in, loads the bases up, grand slams, 9-0 before we get to inning 3, and the Brewers offense just isn't going to go anywhere after a 9-0 hole. And quite frankly, I put it on my Twitter. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. When the game was 2-0, I said, we might be in for a long night. As DMH says, it might be a long season. Haven't had one of these seasons in quite a while. I would agree that it might be. I don't know if I'm there yet. The possibility is there, but I just feel like I think this team just has too much. I just do. And maybe I'm being naive. Maybe that's the fan in me. Maybe I'm just, it's early, but I told you guys, I like May. For me, the beginning of May is just as important as the start of September. This is kind of that to me, the unofficial start of the year. I always circled Memorial Day as like, that's my first time I'm checking the standings as a fan. I would always circle Memorial Day, and I would always peek back at Labor Day. It's kind of what I would do as a fan. And that little chunk of time was pivotal. But I don't know. I feel like this is a team where the talent is there. I feel like it's there. I just, guys haven't measured up to what we anticipated they were going to be, right? Like third base was a question coming into this season. Just really hasn't been figured out. I still love Caleb Durbin there, and I think he's going to be the future there. He was 1 for 3 tonight. I guess he's one of your positives for tonight. But it's just, Christian Yelich has been underwhelming. Jackson Chourio has sort of been, he started off really rough in New York, found his way for a couple of weeks and has kind of fallen off. Bryce Terrain was arguably your best player overall the last few weeks, and he's kind of fallen off before this return back home during that road trip. Rhys Hoskins has been up and down. He had a good stretch earlier last week, but now he's kind of even out a little bit. William Contreras hasn't been the silver slugger that we were grown accustomed to last year. Could that all be because you lost Willy Adames in the middle of the lineup? Could be. I mean, Pat Murphy had talked about it. That guy's shoes are going to be hard to fill on and off the field, and we're seeing that right now, as this team is struggling again with the 10-0 loss tonight at the hands of the Chicago Cubs. A few more comments here before we wrap things up. Drum, if the Brewers become sellers at the deadline, Who could they trade? I don't know if they're going to become sellers. I know this is going to be a popular response. The first guy I'm looking at is Jose Quintana, 4-0, right? If they're not going to be going into the playoffs, Jose Quintana would be a name. Rhys Hoskins would be a name. Those are probably the first two names that I'm looking at. You're not going to give off one of your younger players. Again, we'll see where they are. Garrett on YouTube. Cubs had the hardest schedule. We had the easiest, and we're struggling. Yeah. The Cubs schedule was brutal. I mean, they had the NL West, and they're already done with them, and they're 20-13. It's just, it's not good. It's not good right now for this Milwaukee Brewers team. I don't know where they go from here. The good news is, if you're going to look at the good news for this Milwaukee Brewers team, in a 10-0 loss, Jose Quintana on the mound tomorrow. That's your positive, I guess, going forward. Freddie Peralta on the mound Sunday. Logan Henderson in Nashville. Keep your eye on Logan Henderson. 6 innings pitched tonight, 1 earned run. He struck out 6. I'm not saying his next start's going to end up being in Milwaukee. It very well could be, though. Those are your two positives, I guess, going forward in one of the more embarrassing losses outside of in New York and opening day here in Milwaukee this season. As the Brewers fall to the Cubs by a final score of 10-0, they now fall to an overall record of 16-17 on the season. Tyler Alexander taking the loss tonight, and the Brewers take an embarrassing loss here in American Family Field. I want to give my thanks to all of you for tuning in on YouTube. Thanks to Drum. Thanks to Garrett, DMH, Nick, all of you guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you guys' comments. And again, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can get this in audio format as well. Apple, Google, Spotify, all that good stuff. And again, this is the POSTCAST show. The good news is you got Chuck Freeman on the daily podcast for the Locked On Brewers, and appreciate you guys tuning in to Locked On Brewers each and every day. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. We'll see if the Brewers can get a win tomorrow. Jose Quintana on the mound. Until then, we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.